Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the book club after our little summer vacation. So I'm really happy to be back. I'm sure you are too. And our first session after the vacation is a very, I think, spectacularly special one, frankly, because it is being presented by the founders of Gyan Adab. Now, you know that the book club functions in conjunction with Gyan Adab. So we're very proud indeed that the founders are putting up this program today. Now, Farooq Merchant, you've all seen him, you've chatted with him. Farooq Merchant is an incredibly multifaceted person. He never ceases to surprise me. Now, just now he said that if I hadn't asked him to join the buddy reading of Tomb of Sand, he wouldn't have read it. But another book, Homegoing, that I just suggested on the group, he promptly got and read. Now, what's his background? He is, he describes himself as a techie guy. He has the Messum Group of Industries, which does a lot of high-tech stuff, and much of it, I don't even understand how it is done, but that's what he does. And I'm thrilled that a man who understands technology, to his extent, can also be interested in the arts. Not only be interested, but be a patron of the arts, as he has become. So we're very proud to welcome him. Now, who was his muse, to set up Gyan Adab? So no other than his wife, Nasima. Now, Nasima did her master's as a mature student, and she discovered this passion for literature. And like Satish and I, who wanted to discuss the books that we loved, Nasima also wanted a platform on which to discuss, to present, to share love of literature. And Farooq made it happen for her, just as Satish made it happen for me. So, of course, Farooq has done it on a grand scale. I mean, he set up Gyan Adab, which is so wonderful. Farooq, I'll just quickly just say this one thing. When we were physically meeting Gyan Adab, this young couple came. They had come for the first time. So I just went up to them and I asked them, who they are. And they said they had just moved to Kalyani Nagar. I said, oh, great. So you can come to our programs. We have so many. And you know what they said? They said they had chosen to move to Kalyani Nagar because Gyan Adab was there. And I thought, wow, this is evidence that Gyan Adab has arrived. So that is Farooq, Nasima, Gyan Adab. Okay. Now, you know that Gyan Adab has these branches where we have Nityasha, which helps poor children with type 1 diabetes. We have reading libraries, for disadvantaged sections of community. There's so much good work being done by these two people. And today we're going to hear them talk about a renowned writer, Khwaja Ahmad Abbas, who we've all heard of. We all know something about him. Today we'll hear more about him. So over to you, Nasima and Farooq.
Thank you, Moini. And before I begin the program, I just want to tell you that the whole program that I'll be presenting in English today has been curated by Nasima. Had Nasima not done the research, had Nasima not done all the background collection and selecting the stories, this program would have not taken place. Now, we are fortunate that the last program that Book Club had, we had the privilege to showcase Pakiza, which again was curated by Nasima. But we also got a chance to showcase Khwaja Ahmad Abbas as our first program, and Book Club restarts again. So we did this program earlier in the Urdu language on 8th of April, but today I have made a lot of changes in the presentation and things to suit the book club. And I have had the privilege and help of Chetan Shetty and the group of the storytellers who have helped me bring this program together. So Nasima, with your permission, I start.
Please.
Yeah. So I'll share the presentation which I have made, program on Khwaja Ahmad Abbas, a famous journalist, writer, and filmmaker. I will quickly go through what Gyan Adab is, which Mohini has already explained, that is a literature and cultural center based in Pune. Now we have done away with the physical space, but we are in the online mode now. And Gyanada provides a forum for aspiring artists, creative minds, and individuals having distinctive skills or learning in the field of art, literature, music, and culture to showcase their skills, spread knowledge, and share experience. Gyanada has been there since 2013, so this has been quite a long journey. And Satish and Moini Khoth have been a very important aspect of Gyanada as members of the managing committee. So today's program is on Khwaja Ahmad Abbas, who's well known for the movie Awara, in which there's a song Awar Ho Ya Gardish Mein Asman Ka Tara Ho. Everybody knows this song. This is a song which is there on everybody's lips. So who was Khwaja Ahmad Abbas? Khwaja Ahmad Abbas was a famous Urdu literator. He used to also write in English. And as would everybody know, he did his BA, MA, and PhD in English literature, though he studied in Aligarh University. He was also a famous journalist, and he made journalism famous by the last page, which was a very famous column in the Blitz, which people from the 60s and 70s and the 80s would remember. He was also a very famous short story writer, a novelist, film writer, film director, and he calls himself as a master communicator because you just cannot put one tag on him. And he was a great grandson of Maulana Altaf Hussain Hali. I'll be speaking of Maulana Altaf Hussain Hali just to impress on the background of his family from where he came. Maulana Altaf Hussain Hali was his great grandfather and a big influence on the life of Khwaja Ahmad Abbas. He was born in 1837 and died in 1914 and is known to be the first remover of the Urdu language. He comes at the time where Sir Syed Ahmad Shah, the first war of independence in 1857. He was very close to Mirza Ghalib. He comes from that era and he wrote many books. And he was very much responsible for the existence of Aligarh University because he was very close to Sir Syed Ahmad. Now, what is important here is that during the 19th century, the Muslim families were not so keen on learning English or educating themselves. And these are the people who pioneered education, especially in Muslims. And Khwaja Ahmad Abbas was born in Panipat. Panipat, everybody knows for the Maratha War, Panipat, which you know everybody. But he was born in Panipat, dated around about 7 June 1914. He was the youngest of 4 children. He died in 1987, aged 72. I specially mentioned the name of his mother, Masroora Khatun, father's name, Gulamul Subtain. Wife's name is Mustafa Khatun, whom he used to lovingly call Mujji. His dada, that is his grandfather from the father's side, Khwaja Ghulam Abbas, and his nana, that is his grandfather from the mother's side, Khwaja Sajjad Hussain, all have been doing great things in literature. All have contributed a lot to promote literature, especially amongst the poor. And they really saw to it that each and every member of the family were educated, and something which the men get educated, but the women getting educated is something which was unique during that time. Now, this Ghulam Hussain Hali, if you see the name Hali, means contemporary. In Urdu, it means contemporary. They had a different surname, but the great-grandfather changed his name to Hali to add the word contemporary. Hali means contemporary in Urdu. And as would be, Khwaja Ahmad Abbas did his education in Hali Muslim School, where he learned Persian, Urdu, Hindi, Arabic, and English. After school, he attempted to join medical. He even joined medical college. He joined the engineering college. But somehow he was not keen to pursue with that profession. And he joined BA Arts in Aligarh University. And as would be, he did it in English. One thing great about Aligarh University during that time, I don't know how Aligarh University works just now, but there were many extracurricular activities, including debates in English and dramas. And he used to take a very active part in all that. And the atmosphere in Aligarh University crafted his knowledge in literature. And thus Abbas became proficient in English and Urdu. And this is a photograph of Aligarh University. Abbas came from a family deeply rooted in literature. Two important personalities influenced him, like I said before, his Nana and his dad. Family was very literate and educated. Even ladies were well-read and literate. And Abbas learned reading at an early age. He was so fond of reading that, in the night he used to hide under the blanket, and with the help of a lamp, he used to read the books under the, just like we read with a torch when we were young. He used to read with a lamp, and one day there was a fire under the blanket and there was a big chaos in the house. So just a sidey that I read in my research. After finishing his BA and MA, his father advised him to become a lawyer. Actually, Khwaja Ahmad Abbas did not want to become a lawyer, but his father told him that if you become a lawyer, you will at least learn something about how the country works, how the things in the law works, and how. So he became a lawyer in 1933 from Aligarh University. But post that, he pursued his journalistic endeavors. Now, during Aligarh University, he also started his own paper called as the Aligarh Opinion. Though Aligarh University had their own newspaper, but he did not find freedom of expression in that. So he started his own newspaper called Aligarh Opinion. We are talking of 1936. In 1936, just imagine this boy is opening a newspaper in a university. There was no printing. I mean, the printing press was there with those blocks, and today we have all the tools. But he probably printed maybe 300, 400 newspapers in that block press, and he must have circulated. But he did start his own publication in Aligarh. After passing out from the college, he joined the National Call. This was a newspaper founded by Jawaharlal Nehru as a prelude to our independence. Jawaharlal Nehru had started a newspaper called National Call. But soon he left that and joined Bombay Chronicle, where he began writing the last page. So it was in Bombay Chronicle that Abbas learned his journalistic skills. Unfortunately, he started writing the last page. But in Bombay Chronicle, Abbas learned his journalistic skills. But the Chronicle closed down in 1947. It must be during the India-Pakistan partition that the Chronicle had to close. But immediately after that, he joined Blitz, which was run by R.K. Karanjia. And Abbas continued the last page on the Blitz. And he not only continued to the English last page, but also started the Urdu version of it called as Azad Kalam. In the Urdu, is Azad Kalam or Azad Kalam? Azad Kalam. So the last page was made in English and this is a weekly publication, weekly editorial, which used to come on the last page. And it seems that many people used to buy the Blitz just to read the last page.
Correct.
Blitz, but I don't remember the last page when I was young. But probably Satish Khoth or somebody would remember that. Azad Kalam. Azad Kalam. So the last page began in 1935 in Bombay Chronicle till 1947 and then moved to Blitz till his death in 1987. So you can see one editorial going from 1935 to 1987, which itself says a lot about the last page. In spite of the fact that during those years, he was active in politics, he was active writing short stories, producing and directing and writing films, but the last page continued till 1987. Now, his experience as a journalist, I was thinking, okay, now these experience, when he was a journalist in Blitz, he used to go around reporting crime and visiting hospitals, police stations. And because of that, he came across many human situations. And these experiences became the foundation of his fictional writing. His mind started focusing on various issues. And soon you'll find that before 1947, from 1937 to 47, his attention went on the Bengal famine, the famous Bengal famine, where Churchill did those bad things for the Bengal, took away all the wheat and rice and away to the then he focused on rural issues, poverty, unemployment, and the freedom movement. Let me go to the next slide. In 1948, he started a Hindi magazine as an experiment, and he named that magazine Sargram. This magazine, Sargram, the Hindi magazine was called Sargram. Now, this magazine was in the Devanagari script. And this was an experience Abbas wanted to bring together the work of famous Hindi and Urdu writers. And in the first publication, he focused on Firaq Gorakhpuri, Kishan Chandar, Ismat Chugtai, Rajendra Singh Bedi, and the poetry of Mir and Nazir Akbarabadi. But soon this magazine shut down as many of these progressive writers started raising objections. And so somehow Sargram got closed before it could take off. But it was a good attempt by him to bring the famous writers in a publication together. Now, in 1937, his first collection of short stories, namely Ek Ladki, was published. And the famous story, Ababil, which later on he translated in English and called Sparrows, was part of this collection. Ababil means sparrows. Ababil was his award-winning short story, and this launched him in the literary world as one of the top 50 short story writers in the world. Imagine 1937. It was written by Abbas when he was 26 years old. It was included in a West German anthology of the world's best stories. At that time, 3 stories were selected. One was written by Rabindranath Tagore, one was by Mulkraj Anand, and the third was by A.K. Abbas. And I will just read a little part of the story just to give you a review because I could not locate the English version of the story. Ababil, translated as Sparrow, was the first short story of Khwaja Ahmad Abbas, which was published in 1936. The story revolves around Rahim Khan, who is a farmer and was in love with the Hindu girl Rekha. But their parents were not ready for this marriage because of their religious differences. Both were married off according to their customs and family's choice. This had enraged Rahim to an extent that he starts hating the whole society. After his marriage, he begins to torture his own wife and children, abuses them and beats them. This cruelty continues not only to his own family, but also to the children in the village and even to the animals, to the oxen pair that was run his plow. Children used to flee seeing him coming. Due to his brutality, his wife and children left his home one day. When he came back from his field, he was informed by his old neighbor about this. He scolded that old neighbor, and after he came into his room, seeing a cat, Rahim ran after it to kill this cat, which escaped unhurt. Without taking off his clothes and shoes, he lies down. He didn't have his dinner that night. This also reflects how he was depressed by the news that his wife too has been taken away from him. Later, as he listens to the chirping of sparrows in his room, he climbs the wall in his hut and discovers a bird's nest. Strangely, he is not provoked. Rather, his paternal affections come out and he feeds both of them and calls them after his children, Nuru and Bandhu. One day, it is raining heavily. He calls out to Nuru and Bandhu to feed them, but neither of them appears. He climbs the wall to reach the nest and finds that water was pouring inside the nest. And the birds had been cornered and were afraid of him. Rahim picks a ladder, goes on the roof and fills the gap. But during doing this, he gets wet, for which he gets a fever, and this makes him bedridden. Rahim dies due to this. The story reflects the wanting of love in search of which he turned to take revenge from the society that became an obstacle to find his true love. It also reflects the mental pain which the protagonist Rahim was going through. In a way, it can be called a psychological story which describes the pain which has been described by him. This story made Abbas a familiar name, not only inside India, but also outside India. As Khalik Anjum goes on to say, this story got publicity and popularity not only inside India, but also outside India. I wish I could read the Urdu version for you. It's very well written. In Germany, a collection of best stories of the world was published, in which 3 stories from India was taken, which I've already mentioned. One was by Rabindranath Tagore, the other by Mulkraj, and the third by Khwaja Ahmad Abbas. That's the story of Ababil, which made Khwaja Ahmad Abbas come into the limelight in 1937. So this is the now the independence, as I was mentioning to Satish Koch some time back. All the theatre people had gathered together in 1942, and they all decided, theatre people, people from cinema, people from Bengali theatre, Marathi theatre, Telugu, Tamil, all over India, they got together and formed the Indian People's Theatres Association. And this meetings of these IPTAs, they decided to awaken the people for the Indian freedom struggle. Its goal was to bring cultural awakening among the people of India. This group was formed in 1942. It was in the background of the Second World War, the Bengal Famine of 1943, and the starvation deaths in India, and the continued repression by the colonial masters, and in the wake of the Quit India movement. And as per IPTA, Khwaja Ahmad Abbas got motivated, and the people who were there with him was Prithviraj Kapoor, Bijan Bhattacharya, Balraj Sahni, Utpal Dutt, Salil Chaudhary, very famous names you can read in the list which is there on the screen. The first All India Theatre Conference was held in Mumbai in 1943. And this conference discussed a lot, and a lot of things happened. And during that time, many of these singers and these ball singers in Bengal and the maybe probably the Marathi Lavani singers and all created songs, and they went into the villages and all to bring the message of awakening of the Indian population against the colonial people who are the British who are in charge. Unfortunately, now IPTA is the cultural wing of Communist Party of India, but it had its own this, and Mr. Khwaja Ahmad Abbas was a very active member of it. Khwaja Ahmad Abbas then started writing dramas, for which famous ones are Ye Amrit Hai and Zubaida. Khwaja was influenced by the freedom movement and socialist issues and started writing about it, and thus became a people's writer. He wanted to write serious literature based on Bengal famine, post-independence issues of farmers and rural people, poverty and unemployment. One of the iconic short stories that, so I'll now read out the story of Sardarji. Now the whole story of Sardarji is around about 28 minutes, but I will not be taking the whole 28 minutes. What we have done is this story, which is read by Chetan Shetty, we have recorded it and put it on the YouTube. And after the program, we'll be giving you the links of the YouTube. But please understand that this story of Sardarji was in a typical Khwaja Ahmad Abbas style, in which the first 70% he's showing a different view of the protagonist, and in the last 10 minutes, a completely 180 degrees view of the protagonist in the story. So this story has to be read with an open mind and in a very positive way.
Sardarji by Khwaja Ahmad Abbas, translated by Kushwant Singh. My name is Sheikh Burhanuddin. When violence and murder became the order of the day in Delhi, and the blood of Muslims flowed in the streets, I cursed my fate for having a Sikh as a neighbor. Far from expecting him to come to my rescue in times of trouble, as a good neighbor should, I could not tell when he would thrust his kirpan into my belly. The truth is that till then, I used to find Sikhs somewhat laughable, but I also disliked them and was somewhat scared of them. My hatred for the Sikhs began on the day when I first set my eyes on one. I could not have been more than 6 years old when I saw a Sikh sitting out in the sun combing his long hair. Look, I yelled in revulsion, a woman with a long beard. As I got older, this dislike developed into hatred for the entire race. It was a custom amongst old women of our household to heap all inflictions on our enemies. Thus, for example, if a child got pneumonia or broke its leg, they would say, a long time ago, a Sikh or an Englishman got pneumonia. Or, A long time ago, a Sikh or an Englishman broke his leg. When I was older, I discovered that this referred to the year 1857, when the Sikh princes helped the Firangi, the foreigner, to defeat the Hindus and the Muslims in the war for independence. I do not wish to propound on a historical thesis, but to explain the obsession, the suspicion, the hatred which I bore towards the English and the Sikhs. I was more frightened of the English than of the Sikhs. When I was 10 years old, I happened to be traveling from Delhi to Aligarh. I used to travel third class or at most in the intermediate class. That day I said to myself, let me for once travel second class and see what it feels like. I bought my ticket. I found an empty second class compartment. I jumped on the well-sprung seats. I went to the bathroom and I leapt up to see my face in the mirror. I switched on all the fans and I played with the light switches. There were only a couple of minutes for the train to leave when four red-faced Tommies burst into the compartment, mouthing obscenities. Everything was either a bloody or a damn. I had one look at them and my desire to travel second class vanished. I picked up my suitcase and ran out. I only stopped for breath when I got to the third class compartment, crammed with natives. But as my luck would have it, it was full of Sikhs, their beards hanging down to their navels and dressed in nothing more than their underpants. I could not escape from them, but I kept my distance. Although I feared the white man more than the Sikhs, I felt that he was more civilized. He wore the same kind of clothes as I, and I also wanted to be able to say bloody and damn the way they did. And like him, I wanted to belong to the ruling class. The Englishman ate his food with forks and knives. I also wanted to learn to eat with forks and knives. Then the natives would look upon me as advanced and civilized as the white man. My Sikh phobia was of a different kind. I had contempt for the Sikh. I was amazed at the stupidity of men who imitated women and grew their hair long. I must confess that I did not like to cut my hair too short. Despite my father's instructions to the contrary, I did not allow the barber to clip off more than a little when I went to him on Fridays.
I will take the liberty of going a little ahead so that you can enjoy some more part of the story.
Forgive him. Gave me a Punjabi roommate. When I realized that there was no escape, I decided to make the best of a bad bargain and be civil to the chap. After a few days, we became quite friendly. The man was called Ghulam Rasool. He was from Rawalpindi. He was full of amusing anecdotes and a good companion. You might well ask how Mr. Ghulam Rasool gate crashed into my story about Sikhs. The fact of the matter is that Ghulam Rasool's anecdotes were usually about the Sikhs. It is through these anecdotes that I got to know of the racial characteristics, the habits and the customs of this strange community. According to Ghulam Rasool, the chief characteristics of the Sikhs were the following. All Sikhs were stupid and idiotic. At noon time, they lost their senses altogether. There were many instances to prove this. For example, one day at 12 noon, a Sikh was riding a cycle in the Hall Bazaar in Amritsar when a constable, also a Sikh, stopped him and demanded, "Where is your light?" The cyclist replied nervously, "Jamatar Sahib, I lit it when I left home, but it must have gone out by now." The constable threatened to run him in. A passerby, yet another Sikh with a long white beard, intervened and said, "Brothers, there is no point in quarreling over small things. If the light has gone out, it can be lit again." Ghulam Rasool knew hundreds of anecdotes of this kind. And when he told them in his Punjabi accent, his audience was left helpless with laughter. One really enjoyed them best in Punjabi because the strange and incomprehensible ways of the uncouth Sikh was best told in a rustic lingo. The Sikhs were not only stupid, but incredibly filthy as well.
I will take the liberty of going a little ahead.
One morning, the news spread of a general massacre in Old Delhi. Muslim homes were burnt in Karol Bagh. Muslim shops in Chandni Chowk were looted. This then was the sample of Hindu rule. I said to myself, New Delhi is really an English city. Lord Mountbatten lives here, as well as the commander-in-chief. At least in New Delhi, no hand will be raised against Muslims. With this self-assurance, I started towards my office. I had to settle the business of my provident fund. I had delayed going to Pakistan in order to do so. I had only got as far as Gole Market when I ran into a Hindu colleague in the office. And he said, "What on earth are you up to? Go back at once. Do not come out of your house. The rioters are killing Muslims in Connaught Circus." I hurried back home. I barely got to my quarters when I ran into my Sikh neighbor. He began to reassure me, "Sheikh Ji, do not worry. As long as I am alive, no one will raise a hand against you." I said to myself, how much fraud is hidden behind this man's beard? He is obviously pleased that the Muslims are being massacred, but expresses sympathy to win my confidence. Or is he trying to taunt me? I was the only Muslim living in the block, and perhaps the only one on the road. I did not want these people's kindness or sympathy. I went inside my quarter and said to myself, if I have to die, I will kill at least 10 or 20 men before they get to me. I went to my room, where beneath my bed, I kept my double-barreled gun. I'd also collected quite a hoard of cartridges. I searched the house, but could not find the gun. "What is Huzur looking for?" asked my faithful servant Mohammed. "What happened to my gun?" He did not answer. But I could tell from the way he looked that he had either hidden it or stolen it. "Why don't you answer?" I asked him angrily. And he came out with the truth. He had stolen my gun and given it to some of his friends who were collecting arms to defend the Muslims in Daryaganj. "We have hundreds of guns, several machine guns, 10 revolvers and a cannon. We will slaughter these infidels. We will roast them alive." "No doubt, with my gun, you will roast the infidels in Daryaganj. But who will defend me here? I am the only Musliman among these savages. If I am murdered, who will answer for it?" I persuaded him to steal his way to Daryaganj to bring back my gun and a couple of 100 cartridges. When he left, I was convinced that I would never see him again. I was all alone. On the mantelpiece was a family photograph. My wife and children stared silently at me. My eyes filled with tears at the thought that I would never see them again. I was comforted with the thought that they were safe in Pakistan. Why had I even been tempted by my paltry provident fund and not gone with them? I heard the crowd yelling, "Sat Sri Akal, Har Har Mahadev." The yelling came closer and closer. They were rioters, the bearers of my death warrant. I was like a wounded deer running hither and thither, and the hunter's hounds in full pursuit. There was no escape. The door was made of very thin wood and glass panes. The rioters would smash their way in. "Sat Sri Akal, Har Har Mahadev." They were coming closer and closer. Death was coming closer and closer. Suddenly, there was a knock on my door. My Sikh neighbor walked in. "Sheikh Ji, come into my quarters at once." Without a second thought, I ran into the Sikh's veranda and hid behind the columns. A shot hit the wall above my head. A truck drew up and about a dozen young men climbed down. Their leader had a list in his hand. "Quarter number 8, Sheikh Buranuddin." He read my name and ordered his gang to go ahead. They invaded my quarters and under my very eyes proceeded to destroy my home. My furniture, boxes, pictures, books, druggets, carpets, and even the dirty linen was carried into the truck. Robbers, thugs, cutthroats. As for the Sikh, who had pretended to sympathize with me, he was no less a robber than they. He was pleading with the rioters, "Gentlemen, stop. We have a prior claim to our neighbor's property. We must get our share of the loot." And he beckoned to his sons and daughters. All of them gathered to pick up whatever they could lay their hands on. One took my trousers, another a suitcase. They even grabbed my family photograph and they took the loot to their quarters. Bloody Sikh, if God grants me life, I will settle my score with you. At this moment, I cannot even protest. The rioters are armed and only a few yards away from me. If they get to know of my presence, please come in. My eyes fell on the unsheathed kirpan in the hands of the Sikh. He was inviting me to come in. The bearded monster looked more frightful after he had soiled his hands with my property. There was the glittering blade of his kirpan inviting me to my doom. There was no time to argue between the guns of the rioters and the saber of the Sikh. I decided rather the kirpan of the old man than 10 armed gangsters, and I went into the room hesitantly and silently. Not here, come in further. I went into an inner room like a goat following a butcher. The glint of the blade of the kirpan was almost blinding. There you are, take your things, said the Sikh. He and his children put all the stuff we had pretended to loot in front of me. The old woman said, son, I'm sorry we were not able to save more. I was dumbfounded. The gangsters had dragged out my steel Almirah and were trying to smash it open. It would be simpler if we could find the keys, said someone. The keys can only be found in Pakistan. That cowardly son of a filthy Muslim has decamped, replied another. And little Mohini answered back, Sheikh Ji is not a coward. He has not run off to Pakistan. Where is he blackening his face? Oh, why should he be blackening his face? He isn't. Mohini realized her mistake and stopped in her sentence. Blood mounted in her father's face. He locked me in the inside room, gave his kirpan to his son, and went out to face the mob. I do not know what exactly took place outside. I heard the sound of blows and then Mohini crying, and then the Sikh yelling full-blooded abuse in Punjabi, and then a shot, and the Sikh's cry of pain, hi! I heard a truck engine starting up, and then there was a petrified silence. When I was taken out of my prison, my Sikh neighbor was lying on a charpoy. Beside him lay a torn and blood-stained shirt. His new shirt was also oozing with blood. His son had gone to the telephone for a doctor. Sardarji, what have you done? I do not know how these words came out of my lips. The world of hate in which I had lived all these years lay in ruins about me. Sardarji, why did you do this? I asked him again. Son, I have a debt to pay. What kind of debt? In Rawalpindi, there was a Muslim like you, and he sacrificed his life to save mine and the honor of my family. What was his name, Sardarji? Ghulam Rasool. Fate had played a cruel trick on me. The clock on the wall started to strike. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The Sikh turned towards the clock and smiled. He reminded me of my grandfather with his 12-inch beard and how closely the two resembled each other. 6, 7, 8, 9. We counted in silence. He smiled again. His white beard, the long white hair were like a halo, effulgent with divine light. 10, 11, 12. The clock stopped striking. I could almost hear him say, for us Sikhs, it's always 12 o'clock. But the bearded lips, still smiling, were silent. And I knew he was already in some distant world where the striking of clocks counted for nothing, where violence and mockery were powerless to hurt him. Sardarji by Khwaja Ahmad Abbas, translated by Kushwant Singh.
Wants to add something. to this, and then we'll continue with our program. Nasima?
ख्वाजा अहमद अब्बास की सरदार जी मैंने क्यों लिया? क्योंकि कई कहानियों पर हंगामे भी हुए, मुकदमे भी हुए, जिसमें 12 घंटे और सरदार जी 2 कहानियां थी। सरदार जी पहली बार अदब लतीफ मैगजीन में 11 अगस्त 1948 में शाया हुई थी। इसके चंद माह बाद हिंदी रिसाला माया ने देवनागरी रस्मुल खत में इसको शाया किया। फिर क्या था, हिंदुस्तान के सिखों ने हंगामा कर दिया और पाकिस्तान में इस कहानी को मुसलमानों के खिलाफ करार दिया और हिंदुस्तान में सिखों के खिलाफ। लेकिन ख्वाजा साहब ने जब लोगों को खुद ये कहानी पढ़कर सुनाई तो मुकदमा वापस ले लिया गया। इस कहानी की अहमियत का अंदाजा इस बात से भी लगाया जाता है कि 1950 में खुशवंत सिंह ने जब इस पंजाब पर बहुत सारी कहानियां लिखी तो इस कहानी को पहले नंबर पर लाया गया था। थैंक यू।
So I will just continue with my presentation. Was that another very important going to be read by Mary D'Souza. We'll just read 5 minutes of that story because I don't want to delay. But this was about, okay, 1 minute. 12, this is called 12 Ghante.
12 hours by Khwaja Ahmad Abbas. It was a cold December night. The clock in the station master's office showed 6:45. Another 15 minutes for the train, thought Bina, and resumed pacing up and down the platform. It was a small station with neither a bookstore nor a restaurant. It was not possible to get even a cup of tea. The station building was a 2-room affair. One displayed a board, station master. The other was the booking office. There was no one at the booking window. 2 peasants huddled up in their coarse blankets and with the ends of their turbans wrapped around their ears to keep out the chilly breeze, sat like formless ghosts in the corner of the veranda. Far in the distance, the red light of the signal shone out of the darkness. Bina was wearing a woolen sweater. Over it was a shawl. But at that moment, she did not need them, for she was not feeling cold. Since she had joined the Revolutionary Party, it was the first occasion on which an important piece of work had been entrusted to her. The thought of this quickened her heartbeat, and her cheeks felt feverish despite the icy breeze. Would she be able to do what she had been told? Or would she get nervous? Would she fail the party? She was prepared to face any danger for the cause. She did not care even if it involved a risk to her life. And then the present assignment was simple enough. The instructions that the secretary had given her were echoing in her ears. Look here, our old comrade, Vijay Singh, is returning home after 16 years in prison. We have learned that as soon as he reaches the city, he will be arrested again because the police fear that his return will further enhance the prestige and strength of the Revolutionary Party. His reply at the party office the very next day. He will spend the night at your house. Dina's house consisted of just 2 small rooms. A school teacher earning ₹60 a month could afford nothing better. Besides, she lived alone. No family, no relations, not even a servant. She cooked her own food, Under these circumstances, would it be quite right for a stranger to spend the night under the same roof? Beena had been born and brought up in a conventional, respectable household. Her college education had no doubt freed her mind to a great extent, but the fear of society, of public opinion, still lurked in her subconscious. What would people say? This fear gnawed at her heart. But she also felt that indescribable attraction. But she also felt the indescribable attraction of male company. The secret, unspoken, and suppressed desire for the experience she had so far denied herself. Desire and
I will
fear.
just halt here and go a little ahead.
How can you squander it like that? And she was not convinced. It tried to frighten him. He is sick. He has sores on his body. You might catch some infection. But at that moment, Beena was thinking of those horrible 16 years which Vijay Singh had passed in jail. That long period in which every pleasure of his life had been denied to him. Cinema, theater, song, dance, the laughter of children and women's voices. And tomorrow, these 12 hours of life would have passed and he would be consigned to the same hell again. Vijay Singh would go back with his desire being unsatisfied. He had given his whole life to the cause of his country. But for him, a woman could not give up her body even for a few hours. A woman's love, softness and warmth, a throbbing heart next to one's own. These things had been lost to him for 16 years. And if he did not get them now, he might never get them before his death. No, she would not let that happen. She had dedicated her life to the revolution. Her life, her body, her honor. What was the value of her miserable body when compared to the sacrifices Vijay Singh had made? Better, fairer bodies than hers could be had for a few rupees. No, she would try to give him some comfort with her love, her tenderness, the warmth of her body. In a few hours, she would try to compensate for all he had missed so far. In her body, at least for a few moments, Vijay Singh would get something that he had been denied. And in the years to come, when the rigors of jail life would threaten to make him lose his faith in life, he would be saved by the memory of these few hours. The memory of a girl, of a youthful body, and he would smile. The clouds of frustration would disappear. He would regain his faith in life, his determination to keep alive his body and his mind for the sake of India, for the sake of revolution. And one day, when the country would be free, Vijay Singh would come out of prison, not battered and broken in spirit, but smiling with hope. Millions would hear the story of his life, and his record of sacrifice would make them lift their heads with pride. But then he would have forgotten even the name Beena. In the task of revolution, where would the time to remember an obscure girl? But then Beena would experience that feeling of triumph that an artist feels when he sees his masterpiece. Beena got up, opened the door, and went to the next room.
I will now continue with the program, and I would like to now take the journey of his what he did in films. Let me share the screen again, and here we are. There's one more story I wanted to cover, Diya Jale Sari Raat, that is The Lamp That Burns All Night, but I don't want to take it now because we are running out of time. And I will now quickly go into Abbas's journey in the Hindi cinema. Abbas had shifted from Delhi to Mumbai to gain journalistic experience in the Bombay Chronicle, but he soon got involved in the film industry. The story goes that at that time, that was in 1937, V. Shantaram had made the film Kanku in Marathi. And the same movie was made as Dunya Na Mane in Hindi. And Kanhailal Vakil, who was a regular film reviewer in the Bombay Chronicle, was invited by Shantaram to Pune. But instead, Kanhailal Vakil requested Abbas to go because Kanhailal Vakil could not go from Bombay to Pune. He sent Abbas. And this time, this meeting with V. Shantaram strongly influenced Abbas. Since Shantaram made films of real life situations, Abbas wrote the review of Shantaram's films and his editor was very impressed. And thus Abbas became a regular film reviewer and critic. About this time, in 1942, I just want to tell you that Dr. Kotnis Amar Kahani, one story was written by Khwaja Ahmad Abbas, and that film was made by Shantaram. So in 1941, Khwaja Ahmad Abbas started moving on into movies, and he made this movie called Naya Sansar. And incidentally, the movie company that also he made was also called Naya Sansar. This first story, which was directed by him, was based on the life of a journalist who had serious differences with this editor and who in turn is pressurized by the owner of the newspaper to tweak the news. Here, Abbas's experience of working in a publication helped. And this film became a sort of a success. But he was a story writer. At that time, the director of the film, Mr. Gyan Mukherjee, challenged him. He said, anybody can write stories, but what about direction? And this challenge, Khwaja Ahmad Abbas took up, and he decided to enter into filmmaking. Now, before independence, during the British Raj, every filmmaker had to apply for a license. And around that time, 3 licenses were issued. One was issued to Chetan Anand, one was issued to the famous dancer Uday Shankar, and the third was issued to A.K. Abbas. Having now a license to make a film, Abbas needed a strong script. He focused on the Bengal famine. Now you must remember that there was this movie called Dharti Ke Laal, which was created by Khwaja Ahmad Abbas. This focused on the Bengal famine, which took place in 1943. For this, he researched 2 dramas, Na Bana and Antim Abhilasha, and a story called Annadatta by Krishan Chandra. And generously so, when you see the titles of Dharti Ke Laal, the credits for story writing, Khwaja Ahmad Abbas gives to Krishan Chandra. He mixed the above and wrote the script Dharti Ke Laal, a story of famine and hunger, but also a story of spirit and hope, courage and resilience. And this film had a lasting impact on the populace. Balraj Sahni portrayed the role of the impoverished farmer. And one lady called Mitra something was the actress opposite him in this movie. Socialism was a very famous subject for A.K. Abbas, and during this journey, he met Raj Kapoor. He had written the story of Awara and initially wanted to do this film with Mehboob Khan and Dilip Kumar. But eventually, he made the film with Raj Kapoor, and the film garnered national and international acclaim. And this began Abbas's journey with Raj Kapoor in the Hindi cinema. Awara, who became a very big hit. It was translated into many languages, and I also have an image of how the poster was there in Russia for the film Awara. And especially the songs. I think the songs were written by Shailendra and the music was by Shankar Jaikishan. And then he wrote the stories for all the films. The Shri 420, Jaagte Raho, Jis Desh Mein Ganga Behti Hai, Mera Naam Joker, and even Bobby. Shri 420 Jagte Raho was made around 1955. In 1970, he wrote Mera Naam Joker, which became a famous international acclaim. And in 1972, he wrote the famous story Bobby. And as the story goes, the role of Premnath in that film as the father of who was opposite Rishi Kapoor, he played a very important role of the Goan fisherman, Premnath. That is the story as it goes, that he actually made the image of Premnath. He then made a film called Saath Hindustani. Saath Hindustani was written and directed by A.K. Abbas. And this film was based on how we liberated Goa from the Portuguese, the colonial Portuguese. And this film made Amitabh Bachchan famous. This film also helped raise the patriotic emotions of the nations, especially of the debacle in the 1961 war. And the story goes that 7 people went across the mountains from the Konkan, entered into Goa, and they captured one fort after the other and put up the Indian flags and removed the Portuguese flag. And later on, the army came and they captured the Goa and liberated Goa. Then he made the film Char Dil Char Rahe in 1959. This was the first attempt for Khwaja Ahmad Abbas to do a film as a multi-starrer. At that time in 1959, multi-starrer was a new thing, and this was a film where Meena Kumari, Raj Kapoor, Shami Kapoor, Kumkum, Ajit, Nimi, everybody was there. The film was not successful, and Abbas was fed up of working with the multiple stars. And then he decided in future he'll work with only new artists, and he worked mainly on experimental films. At that time, Pardeshi, a Indo-Russian collaboration movie was made. And this film, Balraj Sahni, Nargis, and Russian actor Oleg Striznov were featured. This film was adapted from the movie Journey Beyond the Three Seas. This movie is about one Russian traveler in the 15th century who came to India, and he fell in love with an Indian girl, and how the society got prejudiced, and they created a lot of problems for that Russian, and the Indian lady was played by Nargis. And this joint collaboration, Indo-Russian collaboration, was directed by a Russian director and Khwaja Ahmad Abbas. It was a romantic story facing opposition from man-made or society-made barriers of religion, language, and geographical borders. Then he made Anoni, a film on a story whose plot was a reversal of the plot of Awara. This again was a film made by A.K. Abbas, starring Nargis and Raj Kapoor. Not many of his films became hits. Some films really got battered on the box office. Then he made another movie called 11,000 Ladkiyan. This was about the working women in Bombay, because in India, the large number of women were working in Bombay. So this was about the life and struggle of the women who come out of their home and work in Bombay. And this film focused on the conflicts and the cultures and traditions of old and new. Then he made a very important children's movie. This was the first children's movie by A.K. Abbas called Hamara Ghar. And this film was a masterpiece. It was a story of children who are going on a vacation or an outing in a boat, and that boat crashes and the boat lands up the steamship. All the steamship crashes and all the children land on a deserted island. And these children are all Hindu, Muslim, Dalit, Brahmin children, and all these children together survive on that island and how they help each other. And it was like a movie on national integration by children in a deserted island. A very unique story that he thought of in 1964. Totally in his lifetime, Khwaja Ahmad Abbas wrote 87 short stories, 74 novels, and directed or wrote stories for 43 films. His own films company name was Naya Sansar. Unfortunately, a large number of his books and reels of his films got lost, because when he died, the people who took over literally, they sold all his works to the Kabaddi Walas. And the people who wrote this book, on which I based my research on, a friend of Khwaja Ahmad Abbas, they had to literally go to Kabaddi Walas to, he had written one very big book called as Inqilab. They located from the Kabaddi Walas. The English translations of many of the novels which he had written had to be, even that very famous book on Mahatma Gandhi, the script of which they picked up from the Kabaddi Walas. Anyway, this is the story. He won many awards for the screenplay of Nicha Nagar. He got acclamation at the Cannes Film Festival. For the film Jagte Raho, he won the Crystal Globe Awards. Then he won the National Film Award for the Best Feature Film, Sheher Aur Sapna. The Nargis Dutt Award for Best Film on National Integration at National Film Awards at Saath Hindustani. Then the Nargis Dutt Award for Best Feature Film at the National Integration for Do Boond Paani, and the Gold Award for directing The Naxalites. So these were the awards that he won. Khwaja Ahmad Abbas left for his heavenly abode in 1987. And just after he died, Blitz published around it is on 13th of June. He died on 1st of June. On 13th of June, the date is written on top here. Blitz published the last page, the last edition, in which the will and testament of Khwaja Ahmad Abbas was put in. And one of the important things that he says is, so I take leave of all with a smile of understanding and love. Love me if you can. And this is the Fatiha that you may recite. He was not a religious person, but he was atheist to a certain extent. He did believe in God and some master who has created the universe. And he says one thing more: if you arrange a meeting to celebrate, not mourn my death, let it be an all religion affair. I will suggest 5-minute speeches by the following: Ali Sardar Jafri, Janab Shiko, Indraraj Anand, Vedant and Gita, R.K. Karanjia, Parsi, some broad-minded Christian, some rationalist Buddhist, some nationalist Jain. About my kafan. Kafan is that white cloth that you put on the dead body when you bury. A Muslim kafan may be used with one addition. The upper covering must be of last pages and Azad Kalam pages in Urdu and Hindi. And this must be buried along with me because I lived and died for them. Shri R.K. Karanjia is hereby requested to retain the name of last page and Azad Kalam and to entrust it to some progressive journalists like P. Sainath, who will carry on the K. Abbas tradition. Adieu, goodbye, all of you, my dear friends and relations. And this is the way he ended his life. And with this, I would like to end my presentation. Thank you very much.
Farooq, that was brilliant. That was very, very nice. I wish we could have spent more time listening to his stories, but it enthused us. I think something of the book club is we have to enthuse people to start reading something different from what they have been doing so far. And this is giving me cause to look for something new, which I can read and listen to. My dad used to come have the Blitz every week, and I used to be reading it page to page to page. And I remember Khwaja Ahmad Abbas's writings there. Okay, Mo, take it over.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the last page also, and I used to read it. I remember Blitz for that, actually. I mean, Blitz used to usually have some very sensationalized news on the front page, but the last page was highly readable. Farooq, very, very informative presentation. We learned a lot about this person worth knowing about. Now, you know that trio of films, Shri 420, Awara and Jagte Raho. I mean, what monuments to filmmaking they are. That period of Hindi cinema, you know, the socialistic period. Wonderful, absolutely wonderful. When we're talking about humanity, we're not differentiating between different groups in humanity. So I'm, you know, this is Satish who taught me to like the cinema of yesteryear. And I'm a big fan. So now to know that, I didn't know who had written the screenplay and all that, to know about the writer has been very, very illuminating. So thank you. Open to other people, comments, observations, questions, please. Chetan, you narrated the story so beautifully. Thank you for that. And I know it is such a pity that Farooq had to edit it, but we shall see the whole original too.
We'll be putting all the full stories in YouTube, and
Yes.
we'll be putting the links in our groups and all, so people
Excellent.
can at the free time,
Access. Yes, absolutely.
I could not read Peter Vegas' story, but anyway.
Mo, how about
Yes.
asking saying Latika whether she can get us Jagte Raho and we can show it around there, because Jagte Raho really made a big difference. कि पानी के लिए क्या करता है, क्या होता है, what is the world around him. I liked Jagte Raho about his best movies.
I'm sure Jagte Raho must be available on YouTube. I'm sure it must.
I haven't a clue.
I don't think we need to search very far. And it's a long movie. So I think people need to see it on their own time. I don't think we can show it on the book club.
Okay.
But then, this has been a very, very valuable session. Yes. Now, Mandakini, by the way, happy to see you after a very long time. Kusum, happy to see you also. Kaveri, Sheena, Chetan, would you like to make a comment?
Chetan, you just read his book, read his story. Go ahead and talk about it.
Yeah, Chetan, you can tell us your experience, how you felt when you came to the story.
No, I think it's very nicely done. I mean, we haven't had time to read the whole story, but he goes into pages and pages to elaborate on the protagonist's bigotry in a way. And then how suddenly all that melts away in the last 5 minutes, where he says, earlier in the story also, he says that this guy, my grandfather also had a beard, but my grandfather was my grandfather, and this Sikh is a Sikh. But when that man is dying, he says that suddenly I felt that this man resembled my grandfather so much. So I'm saying that
Yes.
No, very much.
And his long hair was like a halo.
Yes.
So that suspicion, that awful suspicion that he was nurturing, how, and the prejudices that we have. And there's no way of knowing, what a person really is. So I think you have to go forward with faith and trust rather than suspicion. But that is something people learn sometimes too late in life. Okay.
Mo, Tazeen and Kaveri, I think we can speak now. They've opened up. Tazeen?
Tazeen opened up. Tazeen, would you like to comment?
Okay, Kaveri.
Would you like to say something?
Who said yes?
I had no idea about the range of his, all that he has done. I had really no idea. It was such a revelation to hear all this. And I just love the way Chetan told that story. And maybe for me, there is an echo because firstly, my in-laws were, they were always in Amritsar, but my father-in-law was killed during the partition riots. And they, at that time, there was no border really. They used to keep going to my Pami's grandfather. And they would keep going across the border to Lahore. It was not, it was the same country. So, and the view how beautifully Chetan recounted the story and how beautifully it was conceived and written. Really lovely. And at that time, a lot of the Muslim neighbors had helped them and they helped their Muslim neighbors. It was a time when people really helped each other. It's so evocative, I think, some of these stories. And I really had no idea about the range of his uva. I had no idea. It was wonderful to hear the session.
Mo, Tazeen was willing to ask her something. Suddenly it's gone off.
But where is she now? Okay. Munira has written in the chat that she has read Indira Gandhi's biography by K.A. Abbas.
There's Munira.
Yeah, Munira.
I did this years ago in school. I was in the 8th standard.
Munira, speak a little louder.
I read the biography of Indira Gandhi years ago by K.A. Abbas. This was when I was in school in the 7th or 8th standard. And that is the only book I have read by him. But after your presentation today, I am going to definitely explore much more. I read the 3 short stories which were shared on the chat. I loved all of them, and I'm certainly looking forward to read much more by K.A. Abbas.
Yes,
Wo-
yes, indeed.
Anil Kulkarni is there. Can you ask him to
Anil,
take?
yes, would you like to, Anil, would you like to weigh in? That period of history, you know, I mean, oh God, such a painful period of history, but so much wonderful literature has emerged, you know, about that and during that time. Yeah, Anil, here you are.
Yeah, it was, as others have also said, it's quite a fascinating presentation because I also didn't know the range of his work. I just thought of him as one of those film connected with the film, and the films were good, but I didn't know much about all his writing. And it's amazing that he wrote so many novels, so many stories, so many films in one lifetime. How how did he find the time? I just don't know. And
What a
it's very
pity
sad
that
to
many
hear
of
that-
them were not very successful, right? I mean, in terms of box office or sales, I think his writing was not as successful as it deserves to have been.
So what Farooq was saying is that a lot of the material was lost. Has it now been brought back?
Not
In the
much,
sense that
not much. Lot of destruction took place because they, you know, at that time they used to make these films in that destructive material. The films were not very, they had to be preserved very well.
Right, right.
And the care did not take place. A lot of his manuscripts got lost.
So why did they sell it to the
ऐसा था,
kabadi
वो
wala?
पगड़ी
What
पगड़ी
about
भाड़े
his
का
family?
या पगड़ी भाड़े का घर था. So when he died, I think he did not have any issue. And when he died, the house was given back to the, you know, the pagdi bada mein, you give it back to the owner. The owner came and took everything and put into the kabadi wala.
Emptied
Then
it.
after
Just emptied
24
it.
years after his death, one of the neighbors came who wrote this book, you know, and I'll just show you the book. Which one of his family friends wrote this book. I'll just show you this book. I'll just make a mirror. One beta. I'll just make the mirror.
We can see it.
Yeah, we can see it.
You can see it properly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Can you read what is
Red
written on
Beauty
it?
Revolution.
Yeah. So this lady and her friend, they researched it 24 years after his death. And this is what this book brought out, and this is what is then published in Wikipedia and everybody. And this book is what I could take out a lot of information. Kidhar bhi jayega to this yeah, it was also researched in the Urdu papers and all. So, sir, bolo.
Dr. Bharucha has something to say.
Okay, just a small comment. 2 things actually. One is his beautiful story about Sardarji. It's even so relevant even today. And the other is how Farooq has managed to recreate this incredible personality. And that credit, I suppose, goes to Nasima and you, Farooq. So congratulations for that. It was very beautifully put together. I could actually see this live person back here today. Thank you very much. It was a wonderful evening.
Mom Mandakini is there.
I know.
Manda,
I did invite her. Make a comment.
Manda, can we
You
hear
know,
you?
yeah, Satish, please scout while I talk. So, you know, we all read the newspapers in which in America, we see that those people apparently cannot differentiate between our, you know, different ethnicities within ourselves, and how a Sardar was shot because they thought he was part of Al-Qaeda. You know, I remember that very well. And I thought, my God, I mean, can't they make out the difference? but apparently they can't. Now, the story, Sardarji, as Chetan brought out, that one man's beard is all right, but another man's beard is not. This is humanity. This is human nature for you. This is that typical prejudice. And it was written, I don't know in which year, but it is so relevant even today. It applies even today. For heaven's sake, nothing has changed. That's the pity of it. Nothing seems to have changed.
Very sad, very sad.
Khwaja Ahmad Abbas seems to have tapped the pulse of fundamental humanity, in his stories. That's great writing for you. Okay, so shall we round up? Is there anyone? Yes, Munira, you want to say something?
My sister Farida, who's joined today. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
We saw Farida.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, so she's joined today. Today's her first meeting with the book club. She has downloaded K. Abbas's autobiography, No Man is an Island, just 15 minutes before the meeting started. And we are both looking forward to reading it. And the 3 stories that were shared, that inspired us so much to read more about him.
That's good.
That's good. That's great. That's good to know. So, well, excellent. I think a big learning experience, a realization of how literature never ages, literature remains relevant. And this is the wonder of literature, which is universal. I love using these words: universal, relevant, significant. And his writing is all of these. So it's been excellent getting to know more about him. And next time I hear a song from Sri Charsobis, I will remember that the screenplay was by Abbas. Great movies. Sri Charsobis is still so alive. Avara is still so alive. Whenever those songs come up, I always want to listen to them again. I would never say, oh, I know this one, skip it. Never. I would like to hear it again. And the philosophy, the socialistic philosophy behind those films is so endearing. These were the dreams that India had post-independence. And these are the dreams we have so failed to realize. And it pains me, because we are the generation that grew up with those dreams and with the belief that what the Constitution says, that we are all equal and we are all together. We believed it. We wanted it to be true. And unfortunately, recent years have shown that it's not that way. But, political leaders come and go, and we can only hope that we will return to those dreams and realize them, because the what shall I say, the being of India was meant to be that. That's what it was meant to be. And I'm sure everyone present here wanted and wants and hopes that it will be that. So Farooq, thank you so much. Extremely evocative, wonderful learning experience, and something that we will not easily forget. We look forward to more presentations from you.
Yes, both of us.
As I said, the founders of Gyan Adab have made this presentation. Special tali for you, really special tali. Thank you so much. Wonderful of you.
Thank you.
So we look forward next Sunday to Sheena Shahani, and before the coffee gets cold. So I hope some of us have managed to access that, try to read about it, find out about it. And if you can't, of course, she's going to tell you. So turn up on the 26th of June. Everyone, please note, the book club had become a roller coaster ride. None of us could keep up. No one could read that fast, as to know each book as it came. We have decided that life has turned normal. People are busy. We're going to meet twice a month as we used to before the lockdown. So we've gone back to that format. We're going to meet twice a month. Okay.
And we'll have cups of coffee with us when we're talking, when we're listening to.
Before the coffee gets cold, yes. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. All the best.
Just have one announcement.
Yes.
Thank
Varun.
you, Varun.
Yeah, yeah.
Lovely.
Very
Jnanadab-
nice presentation.
The Jnanadab-
We
the
enjoyed.
other- just
Got
one
my
announcement. Just one announcement. We are going to conduct the other Guldasta Urdu and Gyanpedia programs on Monday. So next Monday,
Okay.
the 20th, we are going to have a program by Prakash Garde on the birds around Pune, our feather friends around Pune.
Oh, good.
To be a photo session and things like that. And it is going to be on 20th, not on Saturday, but on Monday.
Okay, but on Monday. All right.
But Saturday is everybody is busy after the lockdown is over. So we thought better to come on some Monday. Chalo, all the
Okay.
best. And with your permission, I'll close the session here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
very much.
everyone.
Thank you.